All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for coming out today. I'm Darcy Robb. I am the Executive Director of the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities. We are here, myself and this stairs full of advocates, because right now, today, it is legal to pay some hardworking Georgians less than minimum wage. That is legal in our state as of today. Now, I want to point out there are no private companies in Georgia. No private companies are doing this. No. We have 8 disability service providers that have a special certificate from the federal government known as 14C. 14C allows those providers to employ Georgians with disabilities, but they're paid less than minimum wage. Now, that is made possible by an antiquated federal law known from the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act. Not every state does this. Right now, 13 other states have stopped allowing subminimum wages to be paid. Georgia is going to be the next one. But right now, we still have 14C. And so that means right now, about 250 Georgians with disabilities are being paid below minimum wage. There is no low limit. There's no floor on this, y'all. There's no bottom on what you can pay someone. And so there are documented cases of people being paid as low as 22 cents an hour. You heard that right, 22 cents an hour. So on one hand, you have that. On the other hand, you have other Georgians with disabilities all over the state who are building careers and pursuing education. And many of those are the folks standing right here behind me. Yes. Please give them a round of applause. We have advocates across Georgia. You're going to hear from the sister of one of them later today, who were being paid subminimum wage because someone had told them you can't do any better. That is a lie. That is a lie. The young man that you're going to hear about today has been working in a competitively paid job for some time now. And there are people all across Georgia doing the same. We know it is possible for everybody to be in the right job with the right support. You have people like our inclusive post-secondary education students, many of whom are here today. They attend college along with their peers. They have internships. They participate in social life. And when they complete their education, these young people will go on to build careers at fair wages, as they should. Because we are living in a world and a state where we know that education and careers are possible for all people. And to help make that promise a reality for all Georgians, I'd like to introduce Senator Billy Hickman to speak about his legislation.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. What a great crowd. I'm proud to stand here with over 200, I think it's more than 200, advocates to introduce a bill called the Dignity and Pay Act, which will help ensure that every worker in Georgia earns a fair wage for the work they do. Right now, a law called Section 14C, which I was not aware of until we got involved with this, 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act allows community rehab providers to pay workers with disabilities less than minimum wage rates, sometimes as little as just a few cents an hour. This law is outdated and unfair. It sends the wrong message about what people with disabilities can achieve and the value of their contribution to our economy and our communities. Last year, along with a lot of people, I worked very hard to pass the Georgia as a Model Employer Act, commonly referred to as the GAIN Bill, which made our state a leader in hiring people with disabilities for state jobs. That legislation showed what's possible when we invest in talent, break down barriers, and focus on competitive jobs for people with disabilities. In fact, in the Senate, we have a lady named Martha that started last week before last, who works in our refreshments. That's a part of this game bill. The game bill, what we said was we could not expect people in Georgia, independent business in Georgia, to hire people with disabilities if the state of Georgia was not willing to hire people. And that's what the game bill is. Now it's time to take the next step and make sure no worker in Georgia, regardless of disability, is paid less than they deserve. The Dignity and Pay Act will end the use of sub-minimum wages by community rehab programs in Georgia by 2027. We know this can work. Only 8 of the hundreds of community rehab programs in Georgia still pay less than minimum wage. And all traditional businesses here in Georgia that hire people with disabilities pay them fair wages. It's not right. These companies prove every day that inclusion is not just the right thing to do, it's good for business also. Our bill is about fairness. It's clean and it's simple. It's about giving everyone the chance to earn a living wage and showing that we value the work and contributions of every Georgian. I'm very grateful to the advocates, to the families, and many organizations who pushed for this change for years. Your voices have made this possible. Your determination has made it possible. Together, we're keeping Georgia the best place to work, live, and do businesses for all people. Thank you, and I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate and the House to pass the Dignity and Pay Act this session. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Oh, I'm going to try to get through this without crying, but it's probably not going to happen. This is my brother, Trey St. Pierre. He's 36 years old, and I'm his sister, Crystal St. Pierre Stackpole, here on behalf of him. Because he couldn't be here today. Why, you might ask? Because he's at work. This is a picture of him at Zaxby's in our local area in Ringgold, Georgia. He's been there for 5 years. He works as a team member about 8 hours a week, getting paid competitive pay rate, just like his other employees. When Trey first graduated Lafayette High School in 2011, the only option that we were given is for him to attend a supported workshop where he worked on sifting through garbage, pulling out recycling, in a warehouse that was not heated or cooled. My brother's pay rate, we did not know at the time because my mother and I didn't understand what that meant, was that his pay would be based on how fast he could sift through the garbage and pick out certain pieces of recycling. Sometimes his pay rate would be as high as maybe $1.05 an hour, and it was even as low as 2 cents per hour and could change twice a year based on that time test. Trey was not given the opportunity to know when that time test was. His supervisors would just observe him, collect the data, and then alter his pay without informing him. After my brother was working at this sheltered workshop, it had been about 3 or 4 weeks, my mother and I had realized that he hadn't brought a paycheck home for a while. And then when we talked to his job coach at the sheltered workshop, they said he threw it in the trash. And he threw it in the trash because for 2 weeks' pay, he brought home 2 pennies. After sitting down with my brother and understanding what happened, he told me he wanted to quit and that he wanted to get a job like Sissy had. So we sat down at the kitchen table and we made a list of 5 different places he wanted to work. One of those places was a minor league baseball team called the Chattanooga Lookouts, because we live in Northwest Georgia. Funny enough, that job fair was the weekend prior to the time that we sat down to make that list. And so he went to the job interview, and they hired him on the spot. No need for support, no need for coaches. They were just happy to have Trey there. He worked there for 5 seasons, and then after 5 seasons, COVID hit. So then Trey came to me and said, I want a job I can have year-round, because as we know, baseball is seasonal. So we utilized vocational rehab, where he got a job at Zaxby's, and he's been there for 5 years, working competitive rate. Trey feels like he's a part of his community. He calls his Zaxby's coworkers his Zaxby's family, and he looks forward to going to work every day. It is his favorite day of the week when he gets to go on Wednesdays and Fridays. Getting that paycheck for 2 cents really hit Trey, even though he wasn't able to verbalize to me what it was, but I could tell that it reflected his value. And he knew that he was worth more than 2 cents per hour. And now he comes home with only working the 8 hours a week, but he comes home with $180 every 2 weeks. If my brother was here, he would introduce himself to you just like he does his coworkers and the customers that come into Zaxby's. And he tells them, hi, my name is Trey. I have Down syndrome. Don't limit me.
Hey, my name is Quentin Jackson. I live in Tilton, Georgia. I believe every citizen in Georgia has the right to work at a job they want and to be paid a living wage. That means people should be valued for the work they do and should be paid at least minimum wage and certain not sub-minimum wage. I have a job that pays me $15 an hour and flexible hours because they could value me my skills. It doesn't make any sense to me that when people put their time into working, employers think it's okay to pay them less than minimum wage. I believe that is disrespectful and crazy to me because other jobs like McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, Wendy's, Zaxby's, and other restaurants are making $12 an hour or more. What's best for self-advocates and other people like us is to end sub-minimum wage. It's time for us, people with disabilities, to have equal access, representation, and opportunities. We can do better, just like people who fought for our worker rights in the 1800s. Workers protested for higher wage, safer working conditions, and reduced hours. Then again, a 40-hour shift on weekends was virtually unheard of in the U.S. until people stood up for worker rights. Now in Georgia, employers continue to pay workers with disability a sub-minimum wage at less than 22 cents per hour, much less than the current federal rate minimum wage, $7.25. As nearly 2023, 80% of disabled Americans over the age of 16 were unemployed, and partly due to the pay difference. On behalf of all self-advocates and representatives of the United for Change Leadership Collective, I'm asking for you to listen to your heart and soul and vote yes on HB 1125, and let's get rid of sub-minimum wage. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Yeah, let's try that again. Let's see if y'all can respond back. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yay, yeah. So listen, I'm looking at all of you I know who have poured so much of yourself into this work, into helping people with disabilities, whether it is to help them get an education or to be employed or just to take the next step. And I want to say thank you. Your work matters. Your voices matter here at our state capitol. But who I really want to talk to are these people right up here. I'm going to see if I can move this a little bit where I can see y'all. So let me ask you something. Raise your hand if you're in college. Come on now, come on now. How incredible. Georgia leads the way right now in that, in inclusive post-secondary education. Many of you who are parents may have never thought that was a possibility. It's a reality. And these young people up here, they are knocking the top off of every roof in every school they go to. Let's give them a hand. For those of you who are in the program and those of you who are peers and supports and who help others be in the program, it is so important. That education is one of the pathways to Senator Hickman's bill as well. It all works together. So to each of you, I want to encourage you. I want to tell you how special you are behind me because you've taken hard steps to get to this day. But your independence, your perseverance matters so very much. So thank you for coming to make others aware of what you are doing and how much more we can help you continue to do it in even bigger and greater ways. Persevere.
I think I can move it over to the side. Oh, it does move. Yay. I don't necessarily want to hold it. That'll work. Good afternoon. Oh yeah, let's do that again. I feel so powerful. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Wendy Dean, and I'm honored to speak about why Georgia is uniquely positioned to phase out Section 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act. This provision allows the payment, as we've already heard, of sub-minimum wages to people with disabilities. First, let's acknowledge the incredible infrastructure Georgia already has. Our state has a strong developmental disabilities network. Our DD network, which is made up of Georgia Advocacy Office, the Georgia Council for Developmental Disabilities, the Center for Leadership in Disabilities at Georgia State University, and the Institute on Human Development and Disabilities at the University of Georgia are impeccable. These entities work collaboratively to promote the inclusion, independence, and rights of people with disabilities. This network fully supports the transition from sub-minimum wage practices toward competitive integrated employment for all Georgians. Today, there are still 7 14C certificate holders in Georgia paying approximately 250 people with disabilities at wages far below the federal minimum. Let's be clear, sub-minimum wages are a relic of the past. They perpetuate low expectations and reinforce segregation, leaving workers undervalued, excluded, and without real opportunities for advancement. It's time for this to change. Thank you. Our state's history reminds us why this issue is so urgent. Georgia was the birthplace of the landmark Supreme Court case, Olmstead versus LC, which affirmed the right of people with disabilities to live and work in the most integrated setting appropriate to their needs. Continuing to allow sub-minimum wages under Section 14C undermines this principle, keeping people with disabilities in segregated, sheltered workshops instead of empowering them to pursue competitive integrated employment.
Federal policy has already begun shifting in the right direction. The Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act establishes competitive integrated employment as the gold standard for people with disabilities. As the Department of Labor's recent notice of proposed rulemaking highlights, the employment landscape has improved dramatically since 1989, when these regulations were last updated. Today, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is at a historic low, and the number of workers under 14C certificates has plummeted from over 420,000 in 2001 to fewer than 45,000 in 2024. This shows us that we really don't need sub-minimum wage, and that people can work being paid fair wages. As a state, Georgia is already ready for this transition. The tools and expertise already exist to support employers and individuals in moving to a model of competitive integrated employment. Many states, it was mentioned earlier, 13 in fact, have enacted legislation to phase out 14C, demonstrating that not only is it possible, but it's successful. These states have shown that with the right support in place, individuals with disabilities can thrive in meaningful, well-paid employment. Finally, I want to emphasize that the U.S. Department of Labor's proposed 3-year phase-out period is more than sufficient. The conversation around ending 14C has been ongoing for years, and many employers have already begun adapting to this inevitable change. With the support of Georgia's DD network and the resources available through state and national incentives, we can ensure a smooth and successful transition. In closing, I urge all of us to embrace this opportunity to create a more equitable workforce. By phasing out sub-minimum wages, Georgia can honor its commitment to inclusion, independence, and equal opportunity for people with disabilities. Together, we can ensure that every Georgian has the chance to work, contribute, and earn fair wages. Thank you.
All right, that comes to the end of our featured speakers. Thank you all so much. As we want to open it up now and see if there are any questions. Okay. Oh, that's a great question. What would be our message to other lawmakers about coming to the table and supporting this legislation? Senator Hickman, do you want me to take a stab at that, or do you want to take that one? So her question was, what would be the message to other lawmakers about why they need to come to the table and support the legislation?
I really don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think we're going to have an issue. You know, the second signer on this bill with me was Senator Drew Eccles, and Senator Eccles has got an autistic son. So I think that when we learn more and more, and I really don't foresee it as an issue. I'm really excited about it. We're going to push it hard, and I really don't see it as an issue. Yeah. I don't.
I don't. You never know when one's going to pop up, but I don't. Thank you for the question. Any others? No? We must have made ourselves crystal clear. Everyone understands about the importance of getting rid of sub-minimum wage. Okay. All right. Oh. Okay. I'm sorry. Can you repeat it one more time? Okay, sure. So the question was, how do we make sure that these types of pay disparities don't happen in the future? I think the legislation is really the cornerstone of that, because right now, you know, minimum wage has been the law in this country for a long time. This is a law from the 1930s, a federal law that carved out specific groups of people. So once it's illegal here in Georgia, like it is in 13 other states, that last little handful of providers who are currently paying people below minimum wage, they're going to stop doing it because it's going to be against the law. Now, I think what people go to after that is, and we have this happening already, y'all, we know now how to support people in competitive integrated employment. There is a gentleman, and I have permission to share his story, by the name of Chad Roberts up in North Georgia. Significant impact of multiple disabilities, doesn't speak very much in words. Everybody in this young man's life thought he would go to a sheltered workshop or an adult daycare for the rest of his life. His mother did not. He has worked ever since he's gotten out of high school. And it turns out that when you are meticulous and you like to work with your hands, that is a very big advantage when it comes to working in an organic greenhouse. He also works for multiple law firms shredding their documents. We know, you just have to be creative. We know that you can design a career for everyone. There is entrepreneurship. The biggest business incubator for people with disabilities in the country is located right here in Georgia. It's called Synergies Works. We have all these options. There are no more excuses for people not to all be able to build individual careers. That was a long answer. I had a lot of thoughts. That's a good question. How do we ensure people have access to all these services and supports? We keep advocating, and we keep trying to inform people of what's available. We make sure that people know their rights when it comes to asking for what support they need in schools, IEPs, 504s. We make sure people know about inclusive post-secondary education. We encourage people to go to Georgia's technical schools, universities, internships. We make sure people know to connect with the Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency and advocate for their needs, for their jobs, to connect with DBHDD and to get waivers or to get family supports. I think it's just educate, advocate, advocate. All right, y'all. Unless any other speakers would like to wrap us up with some inspiration, I think we will close that on today. I hope you all see what's possible, and please keep talking to your elected officials. Let them know what the community needs. Thank you.